Hi, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be featuring one of our GiveSendGo Gives Back campaigns. When we first started GiveSendGo, we decided that we were going to give back to campaigns on our site from a percentage of the profits that we've made on GiveSendGo. It's one of our favorite things to do, to find campaigns and be able to bless people out of the abundance of what God blesses us with. We've done it from the very beginning when we only had $10 to give, because we know that it doesn't matter how much you have to give. It's when you have the heart to obey God in giving. And so this month we have found this campaign, Love for Lawson, and I'm going to share her story with you, and so that you can be a part of our give back on GiveSendGo. Here's the story that Sam and Jessica sent over. Hello, we are Sam and Jessica Armstrong. We have a 4-year-old daughter named Peyton and a 5-month-old named Lawson. On August 26, our daughter Lawson Armstrong was born in Florida via C-section. As soon as she was born, the nurses and pediatricians noticed that Lawson had bruises and dots all over her body. So they decided to draw some labs, and her results came back that she had a very low platelet count and needed to be admitted into the NICU. A few hours after she had been born, the NICU doctors wanted us to come down and talk with them, and they explained to us that her platelets were dropping to a dangerously low level, and they needed Jessica to do a platelet donation so Lawson could have a transfusion as soon as possible. Even though Jessica had just had a C-section, they explained that it was less of a risk for her to do it than to try to find somewhere else, because there was not much time. So for the first time, they had a local blood bank drove to the hospital at 11 p.m. to do the first ever bedside donation at their center. This would be the first of many platelet transfusions for Lawson. After being in the NICU for a week, Lawson was discharged home, but after our first outpatient hematology appointment, it showed her platelets were dangerously low again, so she was admitted back into the hospital a couple more times that month. After these stays, she started to have twice-a-week hematology outpatient visits for blood work and transfusions. These appointments were 45 minutes away from their home. One thing that was difficult for the nurses was the fact that Lawson had such a hard needle stick, which was needed multiple times a week for lab checks and transfusions. And after much difficulty, Lawson ended up getting surgery to place a central line in her leg when she was 5 weeks old, which made outpatient appointments much easier for her. About a month later, November 2020, that's when things started to get harder. Lawson was not looking well, and she ended up spiking a fever, so they took her to the emergency room. It ended up she had caught a virus and was admitted for a few days. A couple days later, after being discharged, it looked like she was in so much pain, so they took her to the hematologist, and her central line had cracked. So she was admitted and had surgery to replace it. A few days after being discharged from that, she spiked another fever, and the doctors saw that her incision from the surgery had become infected, and she was going to have to be admitted again a few days before Thanksgiving. It was from here where she became full-time admitted to the hospital because she had developed an ear infection, and with her lack of bacteria fighting cells, it was too much of a risk for her to come home. After much discussion, we decided to do her bone marrow transplant at Boston Children's Hospital, where she and I were medically transported there a few days before Christmas, while Sam drove up from Florida, leaving our 4-year-old daughter behind with their grandparents. Since we've arrived at Boston Children's, Lawson has had a series of surgeries, mastoidectomy, ear tube placements, another central line, and many other CAT scans and ultrasounds. After many labs and genetic tests, the doctors are still unable to find a diagnosis, so she remains undiagnosed at this time. She's been enrolled in Harvard's research, but the treatment is still the same. She needs a bone marrow transplant. In order to receive a bone marrow transplant, the patient has to have a week of chemo in order for the body to accept the new marrow. So she had a week of chemo and received a bone marrow transplant on February 9th, 2021. The Armstrongs say they have been so blessed by their friends and family who have used GiveSendGo to help for their medical, food, travel, houses expenses while in Boston. They're so thankful for GiveSendGo because the site made it easy for people to be able to give to Lawson's cause. What we want to do right now is invite you to also join us in giving to this family. be a part of our give back. We will be traveling up to Boston and giving them a gift basket full of gift cards and other things that will make their life a little easier. You can find your campaign in the link below. Please join us in praying and giving to baby Lawson.